One of the most shocking and disturbing revelations of the State Attorney General's investigation into child sex abuse in the Catholic Church in Illinois is the sheer scale and scope of the problem. According to the report released by Attorney General Kwame Raoul on May 23, 2023, at least 1,997 children were sexually abused by 451 priests and religious brothers across all 6 dioceses in Illinois, since that's an average of more than 4 victims per abuser, and more than 28 victims per year for over 7 decades. The report also exposes the massive cover-up of clergy sexual abuse by the church leadership, who failed to report allegations to law enforcement, concealed evidence, transferred abusers to other parishes or dioceses, and misled the public about the extent and nature of the abuse. The report reveals that only 103 abusers were publicly listed by the diocese before the investigation, while hundreds more remained hidden from view. The report also criticizes the diocese for using vague and inconsistent criteria to determine whether an allegation was credible or substantiated, and for not providing adequate support and assistance to survivors. The report features detailed narrative accounts of child sex abuse committed by Catholic clerics, many of which are based on the survivors' own experiences and told from their point of view. The stories are heartbreaking and horrifying, describing physical, emotional, and spiritual trauma inflicted by trusted figures of authority and faith. Some of the survivors were as young as 3 years old when they were abused. Some were abused repeatedly over years or decades. Some were abused by multiple clerics. Some were threatened, coerced, or bribed into silence. Some never told anyone until decades later. Some never lived to tell their stories. The report also highlights the courage and resilience of the survivors who came forward to share their stories with the Attorney General's office, despite the fear, shame, and stigma they faced. The report acknowledges that there are likely many more survivors who have not yet spoken out or who have passed away without ever receiving justice or healing. The report urges the diocese to implement reforms and recommendations to prevent future abuse, to hold abusers accountable, and to support survivors in their healing process. The State Attorney General's investigation into child sex abuse in the Catholic Church in Illinois is a landmark achievement in exposing the truth and seeking justice for survivors. It is also a sobering reminder of the devastating impact of clergy sexual abuse on individuals, families, communities, and society as a whole. It is a call to action for all of us to protect children from harm and to support survivors in their recovery. The Catholic Church in Illinois has been accused of covering up and underreporting the extent of child sex abuse by its clergy. According to a report by the Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul, released in May 2023, the church publicly listed only 103 substantiated abusers before the investigation, while the actual number was at least 451. These abusers sexually abused nearly 2,000 children since 1950. The report also found that the church leaders failed to report at least 500 allegations to law enforcement or child welfare authorities. Instead, they often moved the accused clerics to different parishes or dioceses, where they could continue to abuse more children. The report also criticized the church for not providing adequate support and care to the survivors of abuse. The report was based on a 5-year investigation that involved reviewing over 100,000 documents held by the diocese and communicating with survivors through email, letters, interviews, and phone calls. The report contains detailed narratives of the abuse, written in consultation with survivors and told from their point of view. The report also contains recommendations for the diocese to improve their policies and procedures for handling future allegations of abuse. The report was intended to provide some closure to survivors of child sex abuse by Catholic clerics by shining a light on those who violated their positions of power and trust, and on the individuals in church leadership who covered up that abuse. The report also aimed to hold the church accountable for betraying the public's trust and failing to protect its most vulnerable members.